sites, both as it relates to Nord Stream and beyond as it relates to how do we also consider how sanctions are relieved as a measure for people to be induced to do something because they want the relief from it. So we appreciate those insights. Senator Booker.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. What I want to get back to with Dr. Vanskak is just the issue of the ICC, which is, frankly, a lot more complicated, I think, given some of the decisions by the Trump administration and others. I look at the Horn of Africa, for example, and the challenges we're facing with a lot of African countries because of the steps that the ICC has taken, failing to do, as you said in your wonderful analysis to Senator Risch, looking less likely that they're going to comply or invite in the ICC's authority. And it creates a very difficult environment in a region in the Horn of Africa that is ripe with international human rights violations. And so I'm wondering how you create that balance of the legitimacy of the ICC along with the urgency to get the participation of many of those nations.
Yes, thank you for that question. And I share your concern about the situation in the Horn of Africa and the deterioration there and frankly, the risk of civilians in either caught in the crossfire or being directly targeted by so many of the armed groups there, the Tigrayan forces, the national forces, and even Eritrea's involvement in the Horn. Ethiopia is not a member of the ICC, so there is not an obvious pathway there. So it will be incumbent upon the nation to undertake its own transitional justice process as part of a larger political settlement. And I know that the administration is working hard to try and encourage that through diplomacy, those sorts of movement towards bringing the parties to the table and reaching some sort of a negotiated solution. A transitional justice program would have to involve everything from acknowledging harm to the survivors, to restitution of property if that's necessary, and ultimately to accountability to those most responsible. The ICC may play a role eventually. It would require either a Security Council referral or an acceptance of jurisdiction by Ethiopia. As you mentioned, some African states and other states around the globe have voluntarily self-referred matters to the court on the recognition that their domestic system is unable to handle it, or that it might be helpful to have an international body dealing with certain cases while the domestic system deals with other cases. And so if confirmed in the role, I would look forward to working with our incoming special envoy to the Horn of Africa, others across the regional bureaus, et cetera, to try and encourage the parties in the Horn of Africa to reach a genuine transitional justice program that involves a measure of accountability for victims.
And that alignment between where the ICC is resonating with our diplomatic aims, where there's countries that are members, are there areas as you potentially ascend to this position that beyond the Horn that you have a really good ambition that we can make an impact from your office?
Absolutely. We've already seen in Central Africa that direct assistance and cooperation by the United States has led to some recent successes in the court. I'm thinking, for example, of the cases against Dominic Ongwen, who was the top commander of the Lord's Resistance Army, which is wreaking havoc in northern Uganda and elsewhere in the region. In addition, Bosco Ntaganda, who was recently convicted of a whole series of war crimes and crimes against humanity, including the use and abuse of child soldiers and sexual violence. As leader of the M23, the United States was instrumental in bringing those individuals to The Hague and in assisting the prosecutor there with those prosecutions. And I think that's a role that we can play going forward. So again, as I mentioned, so long as the work of the court is consistent with our foreign policy priorities and that we're in a position to be supportive.
I really appreciate it. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, your experience, your work in public service, your expertise, and your nationally recognized stature on these issues, it gives me great excitement about the difference you're going to make in a very important job that can literally save lives and prevent atrocities. And real quick, in my remaining time, Mr. Sunas, I have a lot of concerns about China's continued investment in strategically important ports around the world. We have seen China buy and invest in critical ports with stakes in ports in and along Africa's east coast, in critical shipping lanes in Asia, and even in Europe, such as ports in Greece. How do you assess China's investment in critical infrastructure such as the port of Piraeus? And what can the U.S. do to counter Chinese potential to lock on this port, lock up these areas and other critical infrastructure in Greece?
Thank you for your question, Senator. And it's a very seminal one. China has engaged in economic encroachment and malign influence. It is part of a very concerted effort and plan, and it is going to continue. The Rish China report not only highlights various examples of this, but it also speaks to transatlantic cooperation on how we counteract this. I'm proud to say that Greece chose a European partner for 5G, and they're very clear-eyed about what China is doing. I will also say that at the time of the purchase of the tender of the port of Piraeus, China was the only offer. We need to show up. We need to be aggressive. It's very clear that they're looking to make critical infrastructure investments in interconnectors, grids, and ports, and then use that economic influence into more geopolitical influence to promote the interests of the PRC and the Communist Party of China. If confirmed, I pledge to work with the administration, this committee, the government of Greece, to counteract this. And as a business person, I understand what it is to compete aggressively in business transactions.
I really appreciate that, and not only the nuances of your answer, but you showed great diplomacy there by mentioning Ranking Member Rish's very important report.
Well, we give the ranking member and his staff credit that that was actually a very good report. So